And we're off. So, welcome to the Protect the Pay podcast. I am Brian McCormick. My co host, Patrick Burns, will be on the next episode. He is out today, but have no fear. We have plenty of content to get through today. Just want to introduce myself. So, I am an avid NBA fan. You can catch me on the couch late at night, checking box scores, watching late night NBA, and even going on NBA Twitter and just looking at funny tweets or, some crazy statistics. So, I really appreciate you guys tuning in here. This is something that I've been trying to get together for quite some time now. I was kind of nervous to start it, didn't know exactly where to start, became a podcast equipment expert last week, if you want to call it that. But again, this is going to be a lot of fun here, and I just can't wait for us to, keep going along here. I know that it is the NBA Finals, but we're also going to cover a ton of the offseason, including the NBA draft, free agency, team outlooks. And then before you know it, it's going to be training camp and then the start of the season. So without further ado, let's dive into this. Could we talk a second about how the Miami Heat are playing like the 96 Bulls, right? Now, I say that jokingly because obviously, those Bulls teams, they won many titles. But win or lose, this could go down as one of the best postseason runs we've ever seen, like from any team. Not like, forget the fact that they're an 8th seed. Not even like that's a great part of the story, obviously. But even just ignoring that for a second, their path to the finals so far has been insane. They went through the 2 title favorites in the league before the playoffs, at least, in the Bucks and the Celtics. So, if this was April and I told you, hey, by the way, the Heat are going to go through the Celtics and the Bucks and get to the NBA Finals, you would have called me crazy, right? No matter how well they play, you cannot see Giannis, you cannot see Tatum, Jaylen Brown just collapsing like they did against the Heat. And you have to give them credit because of their lights out shooting, their competitiveness, and their defense, right? Miami almost lost to Atlanta in the first playing game. Or I'm sorry, in the second playing game, right? Oh, no, let me refrain here. Miami lost to Atlanta in the first playing game, which I cannot believe, and I just had to do a double take right there. They lose to a Hawks team, and then they have to go play Chicago in the second playing team. And with about 2 minutes left, they're pretty much tied up, right? And you're thinking, oh my gosh, like maybe the Bulls get the AC. You're not thinking of the Heat as this title contender. And now that you have it, they just beat the Celtics in 7 games. I understand that the Heat were up 3-0. They almost blew that lead. But a win is a win, and they're going on to the next round. And just to add to how insane of a run this is for them, Miami played 8 guys in Game 7. 4 of those guys are undrafted. I'm going to say that again. The Miami Heat played 8 guys in Game 7 against Boston, and 4 of those guys are undrafted. You have Gabe Vincent, Max Strus, Caleb Martin, and Duncan Robinson. Almost forgot about him. 4 undrafted guys just took down one of the elite title contenders, at least per Vegas, at least per what the rest of the world was watching. The Celtics went to the finals last year. Sure, they lost, but we did not see them losing this series against Miami. And I look back at previous playoff runs. This has never happened before. 4 undrafted players playing at the elite levels that they were playing at and beating, Goliath. This was David versus Goliath, and Boston collapsed. Now, Max Strus, funny enough, I saw this today on Twitter. Max Strus was waived by the Celtics in 2019. I thought that was ironic. But if I bring up some of these Eastern Conference playoff stats, it's going to blow your mind. So Caleb Martin, he has 4 Eastern Conference Final MVP votes. Jimmy gets 5. Jimmy wins the Eastern Conference Final MVP. No problem here, although it could have went to Caleb Martin, right? But I can't speak enough about how well Caleb Martin played against Boston, not just on the offensive end, but on the defensive end as well. But I had the stats right in front of me. Caleb Martin, 19.3 points a game, 6.4 rebounds, and he shot 60% in the Eastern Conference Finals, right? Gabe Vincent, almost 16 points a game. He shot 51% from three-point range in that playoff series. Insane. The Heat, with those 4 undrafted players, They all had double figures throughout that playoff series. Well, Max Strus had 9.4 points, almost 10, right? But 4 of their players in double figures in the series were undrafted. Like, I just can't believe it. And I'm a Sixers fan over here, and I'm trying to ask Tobias Harris to score us 4 points, or more than 2 points, right? He had 2 points in Game 6 against Boston. I'm asking Tobias Harris to do something. I'm asking for Shake Milton to do something. Miami is finding these guys out of the woodwork, and they're not only just playing at a capable level, they're taking over these games in many big moments. Very jealous of Heat culture. I was always someone that rolled their eyes when I heard about Heat culture, but it is real. And I wish they could sprinkle that in Philadelphia, but obviously that's not happening anytime soon. But the Heat, with those guys that I just named, along with the rest of their team, they made 89 threes in the Eastern Conference Finals, which is now a record. It was previously held by the 2019 Toronto Raptors. They had 86 three-pointers. So we'll talk about Boston in a second, but you have to give the Heat their props, right? You saw Boston lose Malcolm Brogdon, and they kind of fell apart a little bit. They didn't have the bench play that they wanted. The Heat lost Tyler Hero, arguably their second-best player, at least from what we saw throughout the regular season, right? And, it could be debatable now. And then they lost Victor Oladipo, which he's not in all-star form like he used to be, but he plays amazing defense when he's in the mood to do it. And he's very versatile. He can play a lot of roles on offense for you. And they're still rolling through these teams. So we have to give the Heat their flowers, I think. I don't know. We can get into the finals matchup very soon here, Heat Nuggets. But I'm still in shock that the Heat are in the finals. I can't believe it. I continuously picked against them, did not see them beating Milwaukee. I thought the Knicks were an easier matchup than Milwaukee, obviously. I didn't see them beating the Knicks. I had the Knicks in 6. And then Boston, I was like, it's boys to men. It's the end of the road for the Miami Heat. And now look at them. They're ready to play in Denver tomorrow. So we'll see what happens here. Let's go to Boston really quick. I know we brought them up a lot. The Heat just, torched them. Boston lost Game 7 in the Garden. I'm not sure that could have ended any better or worse for their fans, considering they were down 0-3. Like, if you're a Boston Celtics fan, would you have rather lost in Game 4 or Game 7 like it ended up? So Boston showed a ton of heart coming back down from 3-0. They found something in Games 5 and 6, and then again, Game 7, they just looked lost, like they were not ready for the moment. So Boston's offense right now relies heavily on the three-point shot. And that is the Achilles heel for them in the series against Miami. I said Miami made 89 threes, NBA record now. Boston made 81. So on the surface, you're like, oh, wow, like the Celtics almost kept up with the Heat as far as three-pointers. But the thing is, Boston attempted 62 more threes than Miami in the series. And that was one of the ultimate deciders as far as who won and who lost. Miami shot 43% from 3. Boston shot 30% from 3. Right? So Boston, like I said, is a three-point team. They have their offense designed to be a three-point team. I could be wrong here, but if you are a three-point team, you probably want to win the three-point battle. And that didn't happen whatsoever. So Celtics fans today, I see on Twitter, they're talking about possibly trading Jaylen Brown, just ripping the team apart, getting new pieces. Jaylen Brown is eligible for a 5-year, $295 million contract, which that's pretty heavy, right? I mean, that's going to be, I think, one of the first supermaxes of that size. Maybe there was a player or two before that. I don't have the numbers in front of me. But if he signs that, if you're willing to give him that contract and you're Boston, you're now willing to commit about $100 million or more per year just towards Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. Something to think about, because now that collective bargaining agreement that came out is pretty much trying to, tear apart these teams like Boston, like the Milwaukee, like the Golden State. They want more talent to be spread across the league. So Boston right now, they have Marcus Smart, they have Al Horford, they have Derek White, Malcolm Brogdon. They have a ton of talent around Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, but I don't know how much longer that's going to last unless they're trying to, or unless they don't mind paying that heavy tax that they're going to get hit with. But if I'm Boston, you have to pay Jaylen Brown, because what is the alternative? You're not going to get the return that you're probably looking for to stay at the championship level that you're at right now. I just don't see that, especially when you have to match that huge salary. Once he signs that extension for 5 years and it kicks in, he's going to be getting paid between $50 million and $66 million, depending on what year of the contract you're in. Very tough to send pieces not only that match that salary, but also match the talent level that the Celtics are going to want in return. So I was on Twitter and I saw a couple of mock trades, and some of them are interesting, and then some of them don't make sense whatsoever to me. So on Twitter, they were throwing around the idea, both with the Portland Trailblazers, by the way, Jaylen Brown for the number 3 pick and Anthony Simons. And that was kind of head scratching to me, just because I don't think Anthony Simons moves the needle and pushing them over to Brink to be a championship caliber team. And I don't think the number 3 pick is going to really help you in the short term, regardless of who you're getting at number 3. If you get Scoot, he's pretty small. He's about 6'3". Now, Jaylen Brown does not play defense consistently like he used to. He does have lapses, I will admit that. But you're losing a 6'7" versatile guard that can shoot, defend, and then drive. I was going to say dribble, but that, I guess, is the one thing about Jaylen Brown that I don't understand. He's a professional basketball player, and there are many sequences, quarters, halves, and games, especially in the playoffs, where he forgets how to dribble. He's literally doing a crossover or two, and the next thing you know it, someone is taking his cookies. And I don't understand where that comes from, if he just has some sort of mental lapse. Maybe he just lacks, some concentration sometimes, or he's trying to do too much. But you see him during the regular season, and he's at postseason moments too, where he strings together a sequence of moves, and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't know how many guys in the league can make that move and get to the rim like that. He's dancing out there. And then you have days like Game 7, he had 8 turnovers. I think someone said he had more turnovers than free throws in the game. Mind-boggling. And I think someone even said that he had more turnovers than shots made in that game. So then you have the head scratchers, out there that are like, well, why are you keeping this guy if he's going to perform like this at this level, at this stage? And it's a good point too. I understand where you're coming from, but Jaylen Browns do not grow on trees. They don't. And he's only 26. You can improve his dribbling, player development. That's going to be their job there. But maybe you get him to have more confidence and you start working with him on his mechanics and his rhythms. And he starts putting together, some consistent dribbling, and he stops turning the ball over. That's half the battle for him right now. But again, Anthony Simons and the 3rd pick in the draft, regardless of who they get. Again, I'm looking at the mock draft right now. Scoot Henderson, 6'3", very small, not going to help you defense-wise, and it's going to take him some time to develop into a capable player in the playoffs. Brandon Miller is intriguing. Some people compare him to Paul George. He's 6'9", 200 pounds, just has to fill in his frame a little bit. That could be interesting for Boston. However, like I said, it's going to take him a couple years at least to start contributing at the impact that Jaylen Brown is making right now for that team. Rookies just don't come into the league and win championships. It doesn't happen. So scenario for trade number 2 is a combination of pieces revolving around Jaylen Brown for Damian Lillard. And this one does not make any sense to me whatsoever if I'm Boston. At the start of next season, Jaylen Brown is going to be 27. Over this summer, I believe Damian Lillard is going to turn 33. So off the bat, you're losing about, 6 years of prime basketball. And Damian Lillard, as good as he is, as clutch as he can be, he's probably going to be on the downslope of his career very soon. And we just brought up Jaylen Brown's contract getting paid 50, 55, 60, 65 million per year, right? Dame Lillard is not cheap whatsoever. He's not going to come and say, hey, let me take a $30 million pay cut. He's going to come in and you're going to absorb that $200 million, $250 million contract, depending on when you get him, right? And he's not a great defender at all either. I think he's 6'2" or 6'3". That's not going to help you for playoff basketball. So I'm interested to see what the scenarios and the rumors are going forward. But if you're Boston, and this takes a lot for me to say because I am a 76ers fan, I would love to see the Sixers one day be better than the Celtics, which is not today at this point right now. If you're the Celtics, you should run it back with your team that you have. Just add a few bench pieces, like completely fine. Get Jaylen to learn how to dribble again. Maybe take him to some CYO basketball and get his confidence up. But you have Malcolm Brogdon and Derek White for the next 2 years under contract. You have an amazing bench. You have to figure out Robert Williams. Is he healthy? He had some moments in the playoffs, especially against the Sixers, where he just dominated. He would go onto the court against Philly, and he was plus 12, plus 16, plus 20, for his 20 minutes that he was on the court. And then you have this series against Miami where he barely plays in comparison to last year too. So you can figure out that piece. Al Horford is getting older, but he can still contribute, and he's a vocal leader for them. So if you're Boston, don't blow this up right now, in my opinion. Run it back, add a couple more pieces, and you're probably going to get back to where you were last year. And I also say that with Miami in mind. So I don't see Milwaukee losing first round again next year, obviously. We'll see what the Sixers do and see what the Knicks do over the offseason. But I don't see Miami playing at this level next postseason. And that has been stinging me every series so far. They shot about 50% from three against Milwaukee first round. Oh, that can't keep up. They shot okay against the Knicks. The Knicks played really great perimeter defense on them. But then they get to Boston in the Eastern Conference Finals, and I'm like, oh, there's no way they're going to beat them. They can't. They're probably going to shoot 30% from three. Like, regression has to happen eventually. And they shoot 42% from three. Amazing. So eventually they're going to have to come back down to earth. I mean, I have to believe that. I can't believe, or I'm not willing to put money on Caleb Martin, Gabe Vincent, Max Strus, and Duncan Robinson to continue playing at the elite level that they are collectively right now. I don't think Caleb Martin is going to average 26 points per game in a series next playoffs. I just can't believe it. History says that it's not going to happen. So Boston has to keep it together, in my opinion. You cannot trade Jaylen Brown. But again, Jaylen Brown might not want to be there either. He was alluding to the racism in Boston over the years in his career there. So it's not just going to be a one-way street, and it's not going to be up to Boston completely saying we want to keep him, we'll give him the contract. He might want to go somewhere else, get his own team, and be in a different city. We don't know about that. But let's talk about the NBA Finals. So I'm recording this on Wednesday. This is about 6:30 Eastern. So one more sleep, and then it's NBA Finals, which I'm really excited about. We can't downgrade or ignore what the Denver Nuggets are doing so far in the playoffs right now, right? So Miami is really shocking that they're here. I still can't believe it, like I said. But Denver, they're not as shocking, right? They were the number one seed in the West. They were playing great all year as a team. I think some people are still shocked that they're here only for the reasoning that they were not a great road team in the regular season. And they're not a great road team in the playoffs so far. Now, mind you, it is tough to win on the road in the playoffs. I'm not holding that against them. But during the regular season, they were 19-22 on the road. Not ideal, and you typically don't see that from a championship team. You saw this year the Warriors, I think they barely broke 500 or, weren't even 500 on the road. Yeah, they were not. They were like, I think, 8-20 something, whatever. They were horrible on the road. And you can see that as a result of what happened in the playoffs this year. Last year, they're a championship team. This year, they don't make it out of the second round. And at some point, you have to win on the road. All championship teams need to do that. So Denver is 4-3 on the road this postseason, and they're 8-0 at home. So if you're Miami, this goes without saying, and it's probably obvious to many people, Miami has to take one of the first two games in Denver to have a shot. I don't see this playing out like 2021, where the Bucks lose the first two games of the series, and then they go on to win the series after that. I don't see that happening for Miami. Again, some of these guys are going to come back down to earth. I don't know if Gabe Vincent has 50% shooting from three in him against Denver, for instance, right? So Miami has to come out here and get at least one, go back tied in Miami to have a shot. Where I disagree with many, experts, if you want to call them out there, is Denver is a huge, huge favorite against Miami in the series. Denver is minus 480 to win this series against Miami. So if you're new to betting, minus 480 means you would have to bet $480 on the Nuggets to win 100. That's how much Vegas thinks Denver is going to win this series. And I'm not saying they're not. I'm not taking anything away from them. Jokic is averaging a triple-double throughout the postseason. He's averaging 30, 13, and 10. Just insane. We haven't seen that ever as well, by the way. Jamal Murray, he's back to form now. He's putting up 28 points per game in this postseason. And that's something that I've talked about many times before. Is as great as Jokic is, without Murray, they're probably not making the finals. And that can go for many stars out there. If you don't have your number two, you're probably not making the finals. It's very difficult. I do believe, and this goes for the Sixers, we'll get to that, offseason outlook as well too, but you need to have either an elite perimeter player or a perimeter player that plays elite in a series or multiple series. And Jamal Murray is playing at an elite level right now. 28 points per game, helping Jokic out. And they also have a great complementary bench as well as other rotational players. I mean, Michael Porter Jr. can hit the ball lights out from three any night that he wants to. You have Caldwell Pope. He's shooting, I think, 45% from three or better this postseason. You have a ton of guys that can contribute and help out Jokic. Aaron Gordon seems to have a career resurgence in Denver right now, right? So this is definitely a tall task for Miami. I'm not saying Miami should be favored. I'm just simply saying I don't see Miami getting swept either. And those odds are too heavy for me, personally. I cannot put $480 on Denver just to win 100. I think that is ridiculous. Given that, again, the Heat took down Milwaukee and they took down Boston. So we'll see what happens here. They have to go back 1-1. If you're Miami, you have to do whatever you can to slow down Jokic, in my opinion, whether that's sending a double every single time he catches the ball. The only thing is, unlike an Anthony Davis, an Embiid, a Giannis, Jokic has eyes behind the back of his head. So if you double him, he's going to find the open guy. And Denver did a great job with building this team because all the guys around him complement his game. There's not one guy on that roster that hurts him, right? That slows his game down, that inhibits his ability. So we'll see what happens with that. But I don't know what Eric Spoelstra is going to cook up here. He's the best coach in the league, in my opinion, right now. He's probably going to have something that Miami is going to try. And if something doesn't work game one, I'm sure he's going to go to an extreme adjustment in game two, game three, game four, and so on. So it's going to be fun to watch here. But when it's all said and done here, if I had to put money on this, I would say that Denver wins in 6. That's what I would say. I could see Denver in 5 as well. If Caleb Martin, Max Strus, Duncan Robinson, Gabe Vincent, if they just shit the bed out of nowhere. But it's going to be an interesting series to see, not only from the players' perspective, but also the coaching perspective as well too. So that tips off 8:30 tomorrow. And the interesting thing is they have a 3-day break between game 1 and game 2. So if you're Miami, you obviously want to tire out Jokic, run and gun all night whenever you can, keep the pace moving. But Jokic is going to get plenty of rest as well too between some of these games here. So Miami might be in trouble early on if they don't shoot lights out like they are right now. And lastly, guys, many of you that are watching are Sixers fans. I'm from Philadelphia. I have a ton of people in PA here as well, too, just asking me questions. So I'll touch on the Sixers really quick here. It's not going to be a great outlook, I'll be honest with you. But the Sixers hired Nick Nurse. which I think is a grade above Doc Rivers. I'm not going to argue that. I think Nick Nurse can make in-game adjustments, which I think Doc really struggled with here during his time here, as well as with other teams. The only thing about the Sixers for me, regardless of who's coaching, is I'm not excited about this roster. And as much as, I like him as a human being, how, he does a lot for the community here, the Sixers, before they do anything, before I get even remotely excitement about the 2023 campaign, they have to trade Tobias Harris. He's set to make about $40 million next year. And I brought up earlier in this podcast, he had 2 points in Game 6 against the Celtics. $40 million, and you're giving me 2 points. I don't care how great you can be in sequences on the defensive end. For $40 million, I need at least 15 points, and that's being generous. I don't think that's asking for much there. And I've just seen too many performances so far in the playoffs with him shooting 2 for 7, 3 for 9, 3 for 11, missing wide open threes. He just doesn't seem to be a threat whatsoever in some stretches for them. And I think that really hurts Embiid. That hurt Harden this year as well. And it hurts Tyrese Maxey as well, too. So we bring up Harden. We'll see if he resigns. But regardless if Harden resigns or he leaves and goes to Houston potentially, I'm not excited if Tobias Harris is on this roster. I will continue saying that until I see a trade here. They need to get him off the books, open up some cap, and then they can kind of put some more pieces around the bead to make the team better. But until then, I really don't care who's coaching this team. So the offseason playbook for me, for the Sixers, first trade Tobias Harris, figure out the landscape of who's available. I saw an article today, or maybe just a tweet saying that the Sixers, if they lose James Harden, they might target Fred VanVleet. And that doesn't excite me either, to be honest, guys. So Fred VanVleet, he can shoot lights out from 3 when he's on. He's probably a capable defender, against certain matchups. But the defense is what really worries me. If you have a Fred VanVleet, Tyrese Maxey defensive backcourt, VanVleet is 6'1", Tyrese Maxey 6'2". That's not going to help you at all when you're playing Boston, New York, or Milwaukee, and Miami at this point too, right? That's not going to help you at all when you're in playoff basketball, especially. So I don't see that backcourt being able to contend against those teams. So, we'll see what happens. If they can move Harris to get more pieces around that are taller and more versatile, maybe VanVleet works, in Philly. He definitely excelled under Nick Nurse when he was in Toronto. But there's too many unknowns right now until Harris is traded, in my opinion, to get excited about the 76ers. There's still a ways to go for them. Milwaukee, I'm sure, is going to come back stronger. The Celtics, if they resign Brown, they'll be in prime position again. So as of right now, it's going to be a 1-2 punch with Milwaukee and Boston, no matter what moves are made so far. So it's going to be fun to see the offseason play out and see who becomes available. I feel like there's always a star out there that becomes angry or frustrated in their role or their organization, and they're ready to leave. So we'll see if a star like that, becomes available. The only thing is the Sixers don't have a ton of assets either. They traded away a ton of picks so far. We don't really have any attractive young players aside from Tyrese Maxey. And, Maxey is eligible for an extension this summer as well, too. I'm sure they're going to offer him that, and he's going to sign that. So I really don't know where they're going to go from here. But that is it. That's all that I have for the first episode of the podcast. I appreciate you guys listening. I'll let you know when the next episode comes out. It's probably going to be later this week or early next week. So we're either going to have 1 or 2 games of the finals under our belt to talk more basketball. But again, the lineup for this going forward is we'll talk about the finals for another 2 episodes or so. And then after that, we'll have the NBA draft analysis. We'll talk the offseason playbooks for all 30 teams in the NBA. So we'll have about 3 or 4 teams per episode and do a deep dive. We'll talk about free agency. I can't wait for July. It's always mayhem. But the free agent class isn't great this year. Like, if you look at who's available and who could be available in comparison to the last 3-4 off seasons, this might be a quiet free agency period. Again, things can always change. Rumors can fly. but I'm not too excited about who's available right now for any team out there, to be honest. But we'll cover free agency, and then we'll cover training camp. Before you know it, it's going to be October again, and there's going to be the 2024 campaign. But let me know if you guys have any questions. Comment below. Let me know what you thought about the podcast. We're working to improve this every single time we come on here to record. So we'll figure out the mic. We'll figure out the sound. We'll figure out video. Anything you guys want to see, or if you guys want to drop some questions in the mailbag that I post later on too, just let me know here. But thanks again so much for listening, and you guys have an awesome night.